Hey everybody, it's Bobby Carlton, and I am joined by, as always, my friend Pete. Hi, Pete,
Hey, how's it going? Great to
and
see you again,
welcome to
Bobby.
another. Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Everything Metaverse, which is where we talk about the metaverse. We talk about everything about the metaverse, whether it's hardware, software, and today we want to talk about something that Pete's really passionate about. It's a virtual reality experience called Vermillion. And Pete, do you want to talk about it? Because I know you've been playing around with this, and there's a lot of things you want to say about it.
Yeah. So, basically what Vermilion is a oil painting simulation. And it's very detailed and very, very well done. I'm not a really great oil painter, but I've played around with oil paint. I know how the paint behaves. I'm interested in apps like that. For example, like Corel Painter
Hmm.
a couple of decades ago came out, and it was heavily based on graphics tablets like the Intuos graphics tablets from Wacom, which have pressure of the pen and the angle of the pen, and that whole melding of a real world device and a digital environment, and doing something in the digital environment that you're used to doing in the real world and trying to reproduce that experience. So when I saw this app called Vermilion, I was like, oh, I've got to try that. And when I tried it, it got me thinking about something that a lot of apps, well, all apps in VR have to deal with, but the
Hmm.
way they deal with it is really well done. And what all apps in VR have to deal with is the fact that I'm in a real place, in my real body, outside of the headset. In here, it's great. There's nothing around me, there's nothing in the room. But if I move my arm over too far this way, I'm going to whack my coffee cup and it's going to spill
Right.
on my desk, right?
I think there's a table right in
So,
front of me right here. Like right here.
yeah, there you go. I'll get to the table in front of you in a minute, bud, because that
Okay.
is a really important thing for the future of VR, I think. But so to go on about Vermilion, the reason that it made me think of all these things is because of how how they let you move all of the things in the VR environment around to suit you perfectly. Let's say I'm sitting on a couch, okay,
Hmm.
and I want to do this oil painting, but you design a VR app and the easel's over there, and then I have to get up off the couch and go and reach over to grab it. But what Vermilion does is they've got, and they're gorgeous looking props. The easel, for example, they have a bunch of handles on the easel, so you can grab it, you can move it closer to you, you can adjust the height of the canvas up and down, you can change the tilt of the canvas. And then there's another wheelie thing that holds your palette, and you can
Hmm.
grab it and move it closer to you and adjust where it is. And then the same thing with a stand that holds all your brushes. One of the things that impressed me so much about Vermilion, not only, they've got the sound of the brushes scratching and the haptics and everything. So
Hmm.
not only have they done that really well, but they've made sure that no matter who you are, you can adjust everything for your personal height, your personal
Right.
where you're sitting, your personal environment. It's very, very customizable. And this is a trend that you see with other apps. So, for example, I was just trying out Meta Workrooms,
Yep.
which is the Oculus Quest. Basically, this is their, we're gonna give you a productivity space where you can have meetings, show slideshows, do basically their response to Zoom kind of thing.
Hmm.
And they don't allow you to do this. They require you to do this when you start working. They say, hey, you need to have a desk in front of you, and
Right.
they get you to take your controller and run it along the front of your desk, so they know where your real desk is. And this is something that I've been doing in some of the VR worlds that I've been creating is, I have a scene with a cubicle in it. And one of the reasons I like to play with that is precisely because it's a great environment for experimenting and learning of
Hmm.
all the things you need to take into account. Like, um, my first cut at the cubicle, it was okay for me, but I have long arms. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
How do you create an environment like that adjusts itself to the user? Meta Workrooms has done a really good job of that. You trace out the front of your desk so they know where the front of your desk is and they know what the height of your desk is. But then they go beyond, and this is another thing that I think I've talked about in a prior podcast. They use your desk as a surface to draw on for like a mini whiteboard. So they have a big whiteboard up on the wall, but you don't have to go and draw there because, to be real, whiteboards are hard to draw on. Short people can't reach the top of a whiteboard.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we have technology. It makes more sense for you to have a little mini whiteboard that you draw on, and it just shows on the main whiteboard, right? So that's what they've done, but they actually use your desk as the surface for you to draw on, so you get haptic feedback, which is really cool. You just reach out and you go, oh, I'm touching my desk. You draw on your desk. It feels right. It feels natural. And it means you're incorporating their environment, the real environment, into the VR environment so that you get a better overall experience. So another thing Oculus has done, they allow you to import your couch into VR because it's an obstacle in VR. Like, you're in there playing with VRR, you could easily trip over your couch, right? So the trend, I think that trend is only going to continue. Logitech now makes a keyboard.
A keyboard,
with tracking on it.
Virtual reality. Yeah.
It shows up in virtual reality, and you can literally just reach out and type because it's exactly where it's supposed to be. Meta Workrooms, with the desk that I was just talking about, there's a feature called Video Passthrough in the Oculus.
That's right. I've seen that.
Where it will let you see the real world, and the developer can sort of cut a hole where they want you to see the real world. So this Workrooms, what they do is where your desk is, they let you say, I want to see pass-through on my desk. Turn pass-through on your desk. And I did this the other day, and it amazed me because I'm like, oh my God, there's my keyboard. I can now see my keyboard. You can now
reach out.
It's right on the desk, and I can just go and type on it without, fumbling around or making any mistakes. And I didn't have to have a tracked keyboard. This whole trend, it's just going to keep getting more and more, because I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I suspect it's probably something like 70%, 2/3 of people do VR seated. When you see pictures,
right now.
Everybody's standing up, and it's all a big room scale thing, but most people are probably seated.
I'm sitting. Well, it's interesting, right? So you talk about Oculus headsets have pass-through, right? I have mine set up where I can double tap it, and I can activate the cameras on the outside so I can see I can grab my coffee cup. But what you're talking about, right, is by having this environment that you can customize, you're now creating an environment that's inclusive to everybody. As you said, like, some people are shorter, some people are taller, some people might have a disability where they can't stand and they're always in a sitting position, or they might be in a situation where they could be lying down. And so having the ability to adjust your virtual reality environment, in any type of experience, I think opens up the pathway to more adoption of virtual reality. And I think where you're going with this is, and I agree with you that that's going to be a really important part of how VR or XR, whatever you want to call it, sort of evolves, and it has to be in a way where everybody can use it.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually, at the beginning, before we started rolling, I said, well, and we AR is a different thing, but the whole notion of this Quest now has cameras, and it can track my hands, and it's doing something called SLAM. It's detecting geometry of the real world. And you can sort of see that in a few places in the Quest UI where they show you stuff and they go, no, there's obstacles over here. So they don't show you much detail about it, but the headset is aware of its surroundings. and that's sort of that's the core proposition of an AR headset. It's very obvious it's aware of your surroundings, and you get to do things
Hmm.
like I'm going to put a control panel on the wall over there, and so
Right.
it's looking at your real environment and saying, okay, do you want to put things in your real environment, virtual
Mhm.
things in your real environment? So there's a lot of headsets that are coming out that are really they're VR headsets,
Mhm.
but they're going to have much better pass through so
Mhm.
that they can do what's called pass through AR. Right now, most of the cameras that are doing all this are black and white. If they put a high quality or even two high quality color cameras in, then all of a sudden you can have really good high quality color stereo vision of your
Right.
room. Then if they match that with this model that they're making of your room, our VR headsets are going to be able to do all that AR stuff as well. I'm going to be able to run an app on my VR headset. It'll have pass through.
Mhm.
It'll figure out the geometry of my room, and it will offer the same things we have in AR. Like, I want to put a control panel up in the wall, or I want to put a virtual 108-inch, widescreen
Giant
television over
TV
there.
right here.
Yeah. So yeah, we're moving toward, XR is moving toward having your environment be part of your
Hmm.
experience, whether it's VR or AR.
Right. It's I mean, because you like right now, like for most people, look, if you activate pass through on your VR headset, as you said, right, you get this sort of black and white, grainy sort of cameras, and there's a bit of like depth perception, right? That like the things just don't sort of look true. And you're still sort of feeling around, like even though my cameras are activated, when I reach out to grab my coffee cup, I still have to be very cautious because there's no true depth.
Yeah.
And so that's going to change, right? You think as the those capabilities improve and better cameras are installed, that idea will be more realistic.
It will, and I mean those cameras. This is sort of like the cameras that you're looking at are grainy and black and white because really they were put there to track your hands, and they aren't where your eyes are, and that's
Hmm.
why there's a shift in. It's not quite, that's not
Okay.
quite where it is. But these next generations headsets, they're looking at that and they're saying, well, look at all the cool things we can do with this pass
Sure.
through stuff, but oh god, it's ugly, bad looking. We need it to look better. So they need to use better cameras. They need to add color. But cameras are cheap nowadays. That's why
Yeah.
we have headsets. Like I don't know, half a dozen cameras on this headset. So a couple of more cameras
Change that.
that they say from the beginning, oh, these are we are going to look at them. We need them to be a higher quality, a
Hmm.
high resolution and that sort of thing. And then we need to make it we need to we need to fix that problem where it doesn't look like where they're coming from. And that's easily fixable by placing the cameras where your eyes should be, and
Sort of
they
like
can actually
closer,
do
right?
some shifting of the images so
Hmm.
that to correct it. Um, so that will come. I mean, it's coming. We know it's coming. And some of the high end headsets, like the
Yep.
Vario headsets, they already do
Hmm.
this.
I think
Um,
with the Meta Cambria, they're new. Like that should I think will address that issue as well.
yeah, we'll have to see how that is. But I'm definitely looking
Right.
forward to the Cambria
Now,
because they
have you used like HTC headsets? Like, what are your thoughts on those cameras? Like, and how they sort of relate to
no,
sort of
they're
real world
just as
physics?
bad.
Yeah.
I've enabled pass through on an HTC Vive Pro Eye,
Hmm.
and it's still black and white and grainy. And again, they weren't thinking of doing
Right.
this with the pass
Right.
through.
But at the time, right?
Um,
But at that point, right? At that time, they were really just more focused on having a headset that could just, be able to sort of read your environment and not necessarily bring those images into the headset.
yeah, and the HTC Vive and the SDK, when you enable pass through, the main one of the main reasons you do it is so that they can get the images and do photogrammetry and give you
Hmm.
3D mesh not so that you can get this really cool looking, but then you line it up. You basically, some of the demos I've seen, so you're looking at real world and it does the photogrammetry to get the mesh, and then you can do basically AR like things. You can put a virtual object and oh, it's sitting on top of some geometry over there
Right.
in the real world. But
And
the
so,
picture, the resolution of the real world and the look of the real world isn't
is it,
isn't that
right.
great yet
So
with
going
this
back to
generation.
Vermillion, right? This AR or this virtual reality app, right? This painting app, right? Which incorporates a lot of things. Like you talked about how there's audio wise, right? The sounds of the brush and the ability to sort of bring in like customize the environment, so anyone can literally almost everyone can use it. And then there's this haptic experience, right? You were talking about the feel of the brush. Like, what else do you think needs to happen? Sort of like for virtual reality or these type of environments to really sort of play a big role in workforce or training or education or just day to day.
Yeah, I mean the problem is it's for each of those different niches,
Hmm.
it's different things that they really want. But the common things, like Logitech wouldn't make a keyboard that you could track in VR if they didn't really think if they didn't kind of believe in that. And then if that technology right now, I mean, the Vive tracker is this huge thing that only
Right.
works with Steam and that. But I've always sort of thought, oh, we need some technology. We need trackers that we can put on literally anything we want. And I think in the end, those are just going to end up being QR code stickers, because
That's
we're
what I was kind
getting
of getting
more and
to.
more
Yeah. I think QR codes are going to have
processing.
a bit more relevant. Yeah, definitely. And I think that the idea, right? Because like a Vive tracker. If you ever seen a Vive tracker, right? They kind of look like a weird, like a donut, kind of like an ashtray donut, maybe
Yeah,
type of
it's like a
thing. And
really, really big cupcake size.
yeah, and so that technology has to get smaller. And I do think, because we hit like trackers, whether it's a QR code type of tracker, or even those kind of like what are those Apple, like disc trackers. What are those things called there? Even something
Oh,
like
the
that.
tile. Oh,
The
well, no, that
tiles, yeah,
tile was a different, but yeah,
like
that kind of idea.
like tile technology could eventually play a role in that. And because one of the biggest issues for
Maybe
me, go ahead, Pete.
the problem with it is it doesn't necessarily provide you with the orientation
Right.
of it's just, and it maybe doesn't even give you the location that accurately. The
Hmm.
new Bluetooth stuff does give you location accurately, but I don't know if it gives you the orientation accurately. And you need that for a tracker that's going to work in VR. I mean, these controllers, they're tracking at 400 hertz. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, and the IMU that's in them. But one example is if you could if you could write an app for your smartphone, link it to your headset, and a lot of the headsets already have apps like that.
Hmm.
But the Magic Leap did that, and they used your smartphone as a controller for
That's right.
whatever the developer wanted to do in the Magic Leap, because you got tilt, you got
Hmm.
touch. It's a very rich set of capabilities in there. Um, and to close the loop, I mean, with the Magic Leap, you can actually see through it. So you could just go, oh, there's my phone, right?
There's my phone,
But
right?
for
Yeah.
that to work in VR, what I need in VR, I don't know where my phone is, but I'm sure it's within 3 feet of me. But what
It's
VR
somewhere
needs to
around
be
here.
able to do is go, your phone is right there, to
I
basically
think
have a
here's my
pick,
phone right here.
like the same thing with a keyboard, so that I could just go, oh, there's my phone, go reach it,
Yep.
pick it up. And in VR, there's no reason you couldn't have the screen, whatever's on the screen of your phone, you could duplicate
Right.
it on in
Well,
there.
like what if the solution, right, is instead of a single tile, right? Like what if it was like you bought a keyboard tile kit and it was like four sets of like a top right, top left, bottom left, right, bottom right, left, and then you installed it into the corners of your keyboard, and then you chose from menu the type of keyboard you had, and maybe that could be a solution. Or but because one of the most frustrating things about virtual reality is typing in virtual reality,
Oh
whether it's
yeah,
hunt and
yeah.
peck. I just want to type. I'm a typer, and I hate the idea of having to, like, aim and point. and click, especially passwords, right? You're putting in passwords, you're putting in usernames, and some people have long usernames and passwords, and that can be really a big pain in the butt.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And it's not just sort of like that's sort of VR apps need to, and not just the apps, but the system.
Hmm.
So the Oculus people need to allow that in the system. They already
Right.
have, like they have with the with the Logitech keyboard, and they allow
Hmm.
Bluetooth. So I can link my Bluetooth keyboard to my headset
Your head.
here,
Hmm.
and just type stuff. So that's not the problem. The problem is where's my keyboard? I can't see. And that's
Right.
what Logitech said. Well, boom, there's your keyboard. That's what Meta Workrooms said. They said, okay, well, look, there's your pass through to your desk. We figure your
Hmm.
keyboard's probably on your desk. And sure enough, there it was. It was right there. It totally blew my mind. There's a practical use for pass
Yeah.
through.
Do you see
Um,
pass-through playing a bigger role in virtual reality, and especially in the workforce and stuff like that?
well, eventually I see that basically virtual reality will almost go away for productivity things, and it will become pass
Ah,
through pass through AR.
interesting.
And AR, I mean, the Magic Leap has put hardware in the
Hmm.
Magic Leap to block out things behind you, which if you do the whole screen now, you're a VR device. So
Right.
are you a VR device? Are you an AR device? Where does that whole blend go
Right.
together? If you try it, if you think about, I'm going to make a game in VR, and I mean,
Hmm.
Half-Life Out is a good example. How do you make a game in VR, like traditional game where you can go all over the place, and yet you're sitting on a couch? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is a challenge for the developer.
Right.
But if you can give
Hmm.
the developer tools and say, okay, the user has imported their couch. So now you can go, oh, okay. Now you can do things like, well, they're sitting on the right hand part of their couch. So to their
Hmm.
left, there's lots of
Right.
space, but there's probably no space for the right. Or the more I can tell it, but right now I go draw a boundary or I've got a circular
Hmm.
thing. But if I draw a boundary and it says you're over here in the boundary, so you don't have much room to your right. And I'm this is my real world situation. I don't have a lot of room to my right. I've got lots of room over this way. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So if you're doing a VR game, it benefits the developer to be able to use hints like that to know where to put monsters or know where to put, you know, that's the standard thing. Where do you put a dialogue that says, "Hey, your battery's almost dead"?
Right.
It,
Right.
you could put it behind. You're going to put it in front of me where I'm looking, right?
Hmm.
VR is sort of an intermediate step between the old style console game where it doesn't matter at all,
Hmm.
where the user is or what their environment is, and full blown AR where that's the main concern. So VR is in that middle ground where it's spatial,
Hmm.
but unless you use password or something, your environment doesn't
Right.
match your real environment. And that's a weird thing. That's why I wanted
Yeah.
to sort of focus on um, uh, Vermillion and Workrooms and those kind of things because they're taking that into account.
So Pete, so do you think like people will want to have that ability to customize their environment? Like, do you think that's going to help with adoption of virtual reality, and be more inclusive for people?
Yeah, and I mean, some people will and some people won't. I mean, if you live in a hovel, you probably don't want that to be your home in VR. Um,
Right.
but if like some people will want to go, hey, I want my room or my living
Hmm.
room or whatever. Matt used to be here, and he wanted his living room to be in the Steam VR home.
Gotcha.
So Steam VR let you customize your home. I'm sure Oculus now they let you customize your avatar. I'm sure at some point they'll let you customize some sort of home for that.
Hmm.
We're in alt space here, and here you've got a
You,
default home, but if you want to
you can
customize
customize it,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
You can
So
add things.
customizing your home is a big thing.
I will say this. So in my alt space home, like I went through the process of customizing it, right? I added couches, I put up photos, I uploaded photos. So if you go to the alt space website on your desktop or your laptop, you can upload photos to your account and bring them in, and then you can put them up in the real world. So I do that. One place, right? So the Oculus or Meta, whatever you want to call it, when you first log into the headset, I have the Cyber City world as my home space, and I love that space. I think it is such a fabulous space to be in. My issue is I can't explore it. I can't customize it. I can't walk around it. And I think I think a home space is really important. Again with Steam, it doesn't matter if it's Meta or Steam or whatever. Like I love the idea of having a home space that I can make my own, and I think that
Yeah.
to me is really important.
Yeah, and it's sort of like what you were originally were thinking of, like scanning your
Hmm.
space, and right now that doesn't give you. I mean, you wouldn't. It doesn't look very good unless some
Right.
human loads it into a CAD app and kind of goes,
Hmm.
well, that's a wall. Get rid of all that crappy scan wall and just put a flat quad in there.
Right.
Um, So the tools, but then you have other social VR spaces. Like I'll go with Second Life. It's been around for
Hmm. Been
ages,
around forever.
and now you can upload an FBX that you've made in a CAD app. But from the beginning, it was always a matter of you build stuff in the world. So you go in the you buy a world or whatever, you teleport
Hmm.
there, and you've got one 10-meter by 10-meter little grid
Yeah.
floor and nothing. And then you go, okay, create another floor thing and a
Hmm.
floor thing. Create a wall thing. I don't like that texture. I don't like brick. Give me siding or whatever.
Right.
And they have all of this, they call them prims. They have all these objects built into the world so that you can create your own space and
Hmm.
customize it without being a CAD expert. You
Right.
just learn, maybe 10 or 15 things in Second Life, and now you can go and build. And there's lots and lots of really phenomenal builds in Second Life that were built by people that aren't CAD experts.
Right.
Just do it
Well,
like
again,
that. So,
also, I mean, Horizon Worlds, right? They give you all the tools. You don't have to be a CAD expert to build your own space. But then you get spaces like Engage. I don't know if you've ever been Engage, which is like a very more focused on education. So you don't have a home space. You have a lobby. You walk into the lobby where you choose from. So there's less customization uh, opportunities in that platform, but only because it's designed not to be like a home space, a hangout space, but it's more designed to be sort of an education space. However, if you are a facilitator, you have all the tools to customize your room, so you can bring in different assets and whatnot, which I think is really interesting. But then you get things like big screen, which is designed to be an entertainment, like watching movies, and you can't customize as much in there because it's really sort of focused on delivering good movie quality content. So I think there's sort of give and take in different areas. I mean, or
yeah,
as a
well, and
developer, is that
and that's the same thing with
huh?
Meta Workrooms. You really can't customize anything, but Meta
Hmm.
Worlds or Horizon Worlds or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can customize it, but you can't necessarily import a mesh, although they're going toward that thing. So, but then you've also got some, these other spaces. I'm looking at VR chat, and it's very customizable with Unity custom
Hmm.
worlds, and it supports a lot of the Unity
Right.
components that you almost wouldn't expect. So we could create a very rich experience in there uh, without relying on the what the platform provides. Like in here in Altspace, we have basketballs and forget what other there's a bunch of
There's
standard built-in things.
fireworks,
Yeah,
basketball. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, each platform's different in terms of
Sure.
how you customize it and how much they allow you to customize it.
Do
And a
you
lot of that
think
has to
that
do with security.
security? Do you think we're gonna get to that point where I could create a painting in Vermillion or in Tilt Brush and then say, hey, I love this painting. I want to be able to bring this in. I mean, I guess you could, right? You could screenshot it and
You
then,
can. I think I'm pretty sure with either one, you can export to a GLTF file, which is the
uh-huh.
sort of the web format, and
Okay.
then in AltSpace without without a, a huge amount of effort, you can import a
Mhm.
GLTF object. Like at one point, I made hats. I got a bunch of
Oh,
hats, so I got the geometry for the hats. I had to export them as GLTF files. Then I had to write a script to put the hat on you, and that's where I needed to get a React server and learn
wow.
some alt-space scripting and all that kind of thing
Yeah.
because they didn't have a built-in wear a hat thing. I think they have one now. I think they
They
have a
do.
wear a hat thing now.
They
Um,
do.
yeah.
I've gone to like Altspice Hangouts where you can put on all these weird helmets and hats, so it's a lot of fun.
So
I think you can even
again,
pull them up here. Yeah.
it's sort of like how much effort is needed
Yeah.
and how
Hmm.
mainstream is the language. So any platform that will allow you to import Unity scene, I mean, Unity is very mainstream. That lots of people know how to use Unity. But I was looking at Roblox again,
Oh yeah. Yep.
and Roblox lets you build stuff. They've got a fairly rich offering, but you have to learn Roblox Studio and you have to learn Roblox scripting and you have to do everything. So it's a complete learning curve for anyone
Okay. Well,
with
that's a
that may have 3D experience. And
right.
then you learn all that, and it's only going to do you any good in Roblox.
So
So
that looked like it's a good follow-up question. Like, how similar are all the different languages, whether it's Altspace or Roblox or Unity? Like, is there at least some sort of foundation there, or is it sort of like if you know one, you kind of know another?
the thing about, okay, so basically, most of the platforms that let you import stuff from Unity, they'll
Hmm.
let you import the scene, but they don't import any code.
No
And
code.
again, that's a security thing. Because I could
Hmm.
easily write malicious code in Unity and you don't know it's there, you can't see it. And meanwhile, it's,
Pete, that's terrible. I hope
going
you.
off to the web. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the main reasons that they don't just allow you to use Unity
Hmm.
scripting in any of these places. And even, with, like I said, I'm exploring VR chat. They won't even let me create a world until I've used it enough to earn enough trust to be able to build the
Oh,
world.
interesting. I did not know that.
So, and another thing to, with most social VR platforms, there's kids can log into it quite
Yeah.
easily, and then you've got
Yes.
COPPA, and now you've got adults interacting with kids, and it's just there's a lot
Yeah.
of complications in that.
That's
So
a
just
whole other
allowing you to
conversation.
upload
Yeah.
a texture, and the term griefers that I used last week. So in
Yeah.
Second Life, their griefers used to stand around the welcome place where new users come in and just
Wow.
display the most disgusting textures,
That
and it's just
that's
very bad stuff.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing, and I think that's a whole other subject for another podcast, right? Like, as the metaverse grows, right? As the idea of these social VR platforms grows, and we've already seen issues. A woman reporting sexual assault in the metaverse, and we've seen reports of like kids accessing content, this adult content. So I think that's something down the road. But I agree as the metaverse expands, right? And again, we saw this in Second Life, right? And that we still haven't answered that issue, and I think that's a going to be a much
No, I
bigger
it
issue.
always reminded, like I've heard a few people go, "Hey, and it sounds like a great idea." And you talk to a brand, or some brand comes up and goes, "Hey, we have an idea. What we could create this meeting space for
Hmm.
kids," and they would talk to each other about their problems, and we could come and counsel them about their problem. And I just go and get the what is the name of that series? Silicon Valley. Remember the episode of
Oh yeah, right,
Silicon
yeah,
Valley where they got
yep,
fined $10,000 for each incident, and they had, you know, 1 million people sign up, 1 million kids signed up for their thing. But they didn't do the
Yes.
COPPA stuff right, and it was 10,000. So those are real laws. That's not
Yeah.
that wasn't made up. So it's kind of funny, but it's not funny if you
Right.
go and do it, and then the feds come up and go, "Hey, you've got kids logging in here, and a parent complained because one
Right.
of their kids saw something." And
And yeah, and that's good, right? And then and again, and as virtual content definitely sort of moves towards being more real, right? They again incorporating maybe your real world. Again, here's this table I'm touching right now, or maybe wearing a haptic vest where if you punch me, I can feel it. That we are, I think, venturing into this whole other territory where more laws, I think, are going to take place. And even starting back when at the beginning of this podcast, we were talking about just putting a paintbrush to a virtual canvas and feeling the brush, as you were saying, like that. Even that type of texture and haptic feedback, like that opens up sort of like a can of worms of like what else could possibly happen in these worlds, right?
well, yeah, but I mean, Vermillion is an app. It's not a world. It's not social. There's
Right,
nobody
right.
else in
But I'll just
there.
use it as an
You know, I
example, though.
can't go and draw, like a dick
Yeah,
pic on the canvas and offend
yeah.
anybody with it. So there's a difference between an app,
Hmm.
and a social world. And even in a social world, I mean, there are social, triple X social worlds, but when you sign up
Right.
for them,
Yes. Yeah.
verify, you got to have a credit card and all that kind of stuff. And
Not that I know about
and
them. Not that I've been in them. I
no, no,
mean, I
no,
just
but
don't. No,
it's
no.
the
I'm just
same
kidding.
as video, like there's
Yeah.
porn sites
Yes.
that don't let kids in. So
Yeah.
those rules and all of those things have to be thought about and applied to
Hmm.
VR experiences, social VR experiences, the same as a web experience or any other experience. So they're not new issues,
Right.
but
Well,
they can get overlooked because it's a new
sure.
medium and it's like, oh great, we can do anything we want. It's like, no, you have to follow the same rules
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
real
Yeah. Virtual is
website.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, in this world, like again, there's so many good uses of virtual reality, right? Whether it's workforce training, forklift, putting people into dangerous environments, and of course, there's the whole social side of it, right? I mean, during COVID, uh, virtual reality companies saw a huge rise in users because people were putting on VR headsets to stay connected with people. So there's all this great use of VR, but of course, there's always like I think like anything else, right? There's sort of like these negative points and I think as we evolve, even in the real world, like that's how it is. Like and when mobile devices came out, smartphones, like we're like, oh, we're
Yeah.
connected, we're smartphones, but now we're like, oh, wait a minute, there's cyberbullying, there's texting, there's sort of like this social media culture of young people being exposed to things. So I think with anything,
But
for you,
we
Pete, go
basically
ahead.
need to have the same mechanisms in
Yeah,
VR for our VR worlds that we have in our houses. I don't have, my front door isn't wide open and anybody is allowed to come in. It's like, no, this is my house. If I had a business, no, okay, well, that's different. Anybody's allowed to come in
sure,
from 9 till 5 or whatever.
right.
So, what is your VR experience? Whose is it? Is it a personal thing? Is it a business
Hmm.
thing? All of those concerns come in, but you also need to have all the controls to keep people out. And this is another thing that I've sort of run into recently. You, if you're designing a VR platform,
Hmm.
you can't put that stuff in after. You have to put that stuff right into the foundation,
Into the
or
foundation.
you're
Oh,
buying
okay.
yourself a huge problem. And it's like any other endeavor with in computer science. If you don't build security in right at the
Should-
beginning,
Okay.
you're gonna end up 6 months from now with a huge problem, and it's
So
gonna
should that
take
should always be
you.
the first thing on your thought as a creator? Like that security should be like the number one concern.
Yeah,
or
and that principle goes back 20 years in computer
Mhm.
science in general. Is
Mhm.
secure. The phrase is secure by default. And in the old days, everything was insecure, and nobody thought
Really?
about security, and
Uh-huh.
except the bad guys. And they went, look at all the different ways we can hack into this
Right.
program. We can steal your password. Then there was a big movement. Microsoft had a lot to do with it. But the idea was, no, let's make everything secure by default.
Hmm.
So Microsoft changed a lot of their APIs and standard practices and standard components so that no, I don't work anymore. You have to go read about cryptography and put cryptography into your app in order for you to log
Hmm.
in. We won't let you log in anymore with a plain text
Right.
password. You have to use HTTPS. So all of these things to create things that are secure by default, and they apply to a virtual world. So in a virtual world, for example, when a new user signs up, you shouldn't just log them in and put them in the, in with everybody else. Like that's what Second Life used to do. That's
Right.
what leads to all these griefers hanging around the welcome area going,
Right.
new user, let's try a phishing attack or, like
Right.
whatever nefarious stuff we have planned.
Which phishing attacks still work. I mean, people still fall for that.
Yeah, they do, but that's sort of that's the only thing left. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that you
Hmm.
have to use phishing because now I can't there's no technical attack that works anymore, right?
Right.
So now it's educating the user about phishing. But that sort of makes my point that a new user signing up for VR, you shouldn't just put them at the welcome area. You should put them in a private place where there's nobody else around. Let
Right.
them read a whole bunch of stuff, like give them a warning, say, look,
Right.
here's the kind of phishing things that could happen in here, right? And I just did this with VR chat. When you get a world and you go in and it's just sign after sign and you read the signs, it's like,
Yep.
here's how you
They're
mute
all
someone,
there.
here's how you block
Yep.
someone, here's how you report harassment, blah 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 blah, and you just go around and they onboard you. I
Yeah.
don't really like
I
the
think
term onboarding, but
no, I
that's
think,
what
but
they
it's
do.
great. I think you're right. The onboarding, I think, is important. Like if you go into Horizon Worlds or Horizon venues, you get put into this private room where it kind of tells you, again, you get you're onboarded every single time and sort of reminded that. And then they put the tools like on your wrist. So like I think in Horizon Worlds, like if you turn your wrist, you click a button here, a menu comes up to either transport you home directly or brings you back. It puts you in a bubble. I mean, if we're in alt space. If I look down here, I can see all of my options right here for security, and so
Yeah.
like all those tools and onboarding, I think, are really important. And it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that that option, whether it's in social VR or even in a workforce type of environment,
And
I
I
got to this
mean, another
conversation.
thing, another new
Huh?
thing that they've come up with that they didn't originally have, and I think in alt space, or I'm not sure which one, but it's basically a personal bubble. So now you
Yeah.
can basically say, no, I have a personal bubble. No one's allowed to come with this far of me,
Mhm.
because that's
Mhm.
one part of everything. It's just people getting up in your face and blocking your view
Yeah.
and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Someone once argued with me, not argued, I don't want to say argued, said, why can't you just take off the headset? Which is true. Like
Why
if you're
should
in a
I?
situation, but that's the question. Why should you? Why should you have to take off the headset or exit the world immediately that way? You should have,
Yeah.
companies should provide you with
I
the
should just be
tools
able
for
to point
security.
at them and go, you don't exist in my world. Boom, you're
Yes.
gone, you're
Boom.
blocked.
Yep.
Same with it
I,
in
I can
Twitter
block
and
you
any
right
other
now. Wait, I'm going
place.
to block you right now, Pete. No, I'm not.
No, but I mean that's what
um,
sort of what I mean by secure by default is
uh-huh.
um when I shouldn't even be able to hear you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um unless I click on you, go, okay, allow this person to speak to me. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yep.
That's secure by default.
Uh,
Um
yeah. I was just
and
actually
that's what I think it should be.
I was in a concert. I was in Horizon venues for a concert, and I was it was they were replaying a bunch of old concerts, and I was watching the Billie Eilish concert, which I had seen before, and I was just kind of hanging out, and they have these little areas you hang out, and other people come in, but I had these two people. They come up next to me, and they were kind of like both in my ear, giving me a hard time. Like, why are you listening to this crap? And I just click of a button, muted, disappeared, gone. Didn't bother me.
Okay,
And
but
I think
that's
that's
what
what
I
you,
mean by secure by default. Why
yeah,
should you even have to spend your time doing that? And there's a technical advantage. As a developer, why would I make an app where I go to this concert and there's 100 people there and I can hear all of them? Technically, that's almost impossible.
right.
Realistically, why do I need to hear all 100 people anyway? In a real life, I don't hear 100. I go to a restaurant, I hear the 5 people near me at my
Near you,
table,
yeah.
and the rest is noise. And if I can hear someone over there, it's because they're loud and obnoxious. I don't want to hear them.
Hmm.
So if you made things like this secure by default, you could support many, many more people because I'm only going to unmute 10 people at the most, even if
Right,
there's 100 in there. So
right,
if you have 100 people only talking to 10 people, that's 1,000 connections. If 100 people talking to 100 people, that's 100,000 connections or 10,000 connections. Do you know what I
right.
mean? So
Yeah.
technically, it just makes more sense to just say, don't even, you can't even hear
Hmm.
anyone unless you unmute them, or
And
at least if they're within a few feet of you, they can ask you for permission
hmm
and you can
to
unmute them,
talk, like, oh, right. So from your perspective as a developer, it's just easier to have everybody, like, instead of incorporating all those sounds, it's being like, hey, you can only hear people around you, and if you wanted to add more sounds as the user, you should have that option. But what? But as security by default, as you like to say, right? Like, the experience should be, as a default, sort of a safe experience, and you, the user, can click buttons if you wanted to sort of either open up that, loosen up those securities, or change that and make it
Yeah, and
easier.
I mean,
Also,
video, voice chat, and text chat, those are the two main vectors for
mhm.
griefing or abuse or whatever. But just to sort of take an aside and talk about Second Life a bit, and the guy who started that, his name's Philip Rosedale. And before
He's a new
Second
platform,
Life,
by the way, right? I think he has a new platform.
well, I'll get to that. But before Second Life, he was the guy that made real audio. That's where he made his bones. He was the Real Audio guy. Remember
Oh
Real
yeah,
Audio?
okay. Yeah, yeah, I do remember
That's
Real
where
Audio.
Philip
Yeah.
Rosedale made his bones. Then he made Second Life. Then he decided, okay, I'm going to make a new platform called High Fidelity that's based. You
That's
have to have a
right.
VR headset. Okay,
That's
Second
right.
Life
Yeah.
was just, oh, it'll work on a screen. He made High Fidelity. After 5 years, he's kind of like, not enough people are buying headsets, so he he kind of that went defunct. But what he focused on then for a little while, he's back with Second Life now, and I think he took
That's right.
this
Second Life is
technology
still
I'm
going.
about to tell you about, but he focused on audio because that is a problem for scaling VR. Is how do
Oh,
if you have
interesting.
100 people in a room, how do it just doesn't work to have 100 audio streams exchanged with 100 people because
Mhm.
he has to make either there's two choices. Either the server receives all 100 audio streams and then sends all 100 audio streams to every person,
Mhm.
which is 100 times 100, or the server receives all 100 audio streams and then they say, "Where's Bobby? Who's close to
Yeah.
Bobby?" And they
Yeah.
mix one audio stream and send it to you with the people you can hear near you. That is the
Mhm.
secret to scaling VR is audio.
Is audio.
Um,
Interesting.
so he
Interesting.
created, and I forget what it's called. I think it actually is still called High Fidelity. He sort of shifted gears and he worked on that and he came up with a way to mix all that audio. Now he's back at Second Life because the metaverse has become
Right.
popular again and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I think he's basically looking at enabling people to sell NFTs and that kind of
Right.
thing in Second Life.
Sure.
I'm sure he bought his audio concept back with him because again, that's the key to scaling
That's the key.
is getting the audio mixing.
Well, that is an interesting fact, and I think we should definitely maybe elaborate that on another podcast because we, Pete, have made it to our 1 hour. We've made it to an hour.
Have we?
Wow.
Yeah,
and it always goes by quick. I always enjoy.
It just flies by.
I think you're always full of amazing information and knowledge and expertise. Of course, you've been doing this for a long time. So, but yeah. So I think we should pick up on this conversation on the next podcast because I think people would find that really interesting. So, but in the meantime, I want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, Pete and I, we get together every week, and of course, producer Alan. You can't see Alan; he's off camera. He's right over there. We thank you for listening to Everything Metaverse by FS Studio, and of course, if you want to know more about the company, fsstudio.com is where you can find information about what we do, and you can see even some of Pete's work, and of course, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram and on TikTok and all that business. So. But thanks, everyone. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Later.
Later, Gator.